And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Texas.
John, outside of the usual demands from UTLA,
we demand higher pay.
UTLA President Essayli Cruz has another demand of LAUSD.
I will close by raising our serious concerns about the School Safety Task Force recommendation to give schools the option to bring police back to schools based on crime data. We oppose this unacceptable and irresponsible proposal because it fails to address so many serious concerns, like who will decide police will be on campus, who has input into that decision, what is counted as crime in the crime data.
She is full on defund the police.
Oh, yeah.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
Actually, I think she's abolished the police because she doesn't want them there at all.
Yep, that's what she did, and that's why LAUSD police is not allowed on campus anymore, because that was one of Essayli Cruz's demands to end the remote learning at LAUSD.
Our learning spaces are special places.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. In Los Angeles County, voters dumped pro-criminal district attorney George Gascon and replaced him with Nathan Hochman. That was a huge improvement for that office. However, we've still seen crime continue to rise in Los Angeles. We see crime stories on the news virtually every night. Hochman is head and shoulders better than George Gascon, but one man can't fix the problem on his own. Historically, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District of California, which services Los Angeles County, they've been relatively quiet, particularly during the Biden years, where when the trains were being robbed, they really didn't do much of anything. When you had other issues, crime going on where there was a federal angle where if they wanted to get involved, they could. They, generally speaking, took a pass and allowed George Gascon to do what he was going to do, which usually meant nothing. But now there's a new sheriff in town. His name is Bill Essayli. He's a former California assemblyman who represented Riverside County. When he was appointed by President Trump to that office, the first thing he said he was going to do was he was going to start examining all of these homeless organizations that were receiving large amounts of tax dollars. These organizations, we know, have been fraught with different levels of corruption, different individuals being caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and he said it's time to put an end to that, and that's one of the things that he was going to take a very close look at. He also said that he plans on getting around their sanctuary state policies because when he would issue an immigration detainer on someone who was in a local county jail facility or a state prison, the state would say, we don't cooperate with ICE, so we're not going to honor that request. Well, what Essayli did was find a workaround. If you've been previously deported and you come back in the country, that is a felony. And if he says you need to turn a person over because they've committed a felony and we have a warrant, then they have to turn them over. That really upset the locals. And now he is very aggressively going after anyone and everyone who threw bricks, who threw objects at federal police officers over the rioting, over the course of the rioting in Los Angeles. And of course, the local authorities, the local electeds, I guess I should say, don't like that either. But Randy, he doesn't seem to be deterred by the blowback that he's getting from Democrats.
And in usually a very quiet role, he's become very outspoken, explaining exactly what he's doing to Fox 11's Elex Michaelson, who just posted the unedited interview of Essayli's reactions to everything that happened in the last week in Los Angeles, as Los Angeles got international attention. Let's go to Elex Michaelson.
Bill Essayli, welcome to The Issue Is.
Thank you for having me.
So we are here. This is the room where it happened in terms of the Kristi Noem press conference, which you were at, when Alex Padilla literally walked right in this spot. What did that look like from your perspective?
It was a little bizarre and wild. We were up there holding a national TV press conference. The secretary was speaking, And just from the corner, I see he's a very large person. He's very tall. He's got a big demeanor. And he started charging, pushing his way through the security, shouting. We didn't know he was here. We didn't know who he was at the time.
I want to say.
And for all the people, including Karen Bass, that are like, how could they not know who Alex Padilla was? You take 10 people in Los Angeles and ask them with a police lineup which one of them is Alex Padilla, 9 out of 10 will have no idea.
Oh, my test is always, if you took Alex Padilla and you walked him down Hollywood Boulevard, how many people out of the first 100 he passed would recognize him? And the answer, at least prior to this stunt, would be 0.
We didn't know who he was at the time.
I want to say.
And then he started shouting, and then he was dragged.
Oh, it was so awful, too. At Karen Bass's, presser where she was so outraged about what Padilla did and what happened to him, she said, how could they not recognize him? He's the first Latino senator in California history.
Did you see his speech on the floor of the Senate where he started to tear up like he was going to cry?
Yeah.
What a drama queen.
What do you think he used? A thumbtack?
I think his shoes were tied too tight.
We didn't know who he was at the time.
I want to say.
And then he started shouting, and then he was dragged out. It all happened in a matter of seconds. I think he did yell, "I'm Senator Padilla," at some point after, but it was after all the commotion started. My understanding is he was taken outside, so we didn't see what happened. But my understanding,
You've seen the video.
I've seen the videos. Look, the agents, I think, were extremely professional. They did their job. Their job is to protect cabinet members.
Was it necessary to handcuff him out in the
They
hallway?
didn't know. I'll be honest. I talked to them. They didn't know who he was.
Nobody knows who this guy is. Now he's an international martyr, but up until a week ago, nobody knew who Alex Padilla was.
We've been receiving emails from people who watch that video who think that he plans on running for governor or running for U.S. president, and he's looking for ways to generate publicity.
They did not know he was a U.S. senator. It was the room was filled, as you know, with these press conferences. There's a lot of people in the room. Yeah. There's a lot of reporters, journal, print, TV, and it just was someone that started charging, and they just went into defense mode. Their job is to defend cabinet members, and so they detained him. It is standard to detain someone, handcuff them, but as soon as it was known he was a U.S. senator, he was immediately unhandcuffed. He was never under arrest. He was free to leave. And I believe the secretary even granted him a meeting afterwards, and they spoke for about 15 minutes or so.
But that hasn't stopped him on going on the press tour.
I want to add something to this, too. Just because you're a public official doesn't mean you can't snap, too. We know that there's been a lot of commotion going on right now about whether or not a naval ship will be named after Harvey Milk. Well, let's not forget how Harvey Milk became famous. Harvey Milk was a San Francisco supervisor who was shot and killed by another San Francisco supervisor, Dan White, along with the mayor, George Moscone. We just had an incident this past weekend in the state of Minnesota where a man who was appointed to not one, but 2 different state commissions by 2 different governors also snapped and assassinated one public official and attempted to assassinate another public official. Just because you're in elected office doesn't mean you're mentally healthier than the rest of us. If you act like an idiot at a public event and the cops think that you're potentially dangerous, the cops should react as if you're potentially dangerous if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Let's talk more about what the press conference was about and everything that's happened in this sort of extraordinary week.
But I just need to say something about it, though, because if he wanted to meet and have a genuine good faith dialogue, there's a process and a way to do that. He could have requested a meeting. He came looking for a show, and he had his staffer ready to film everything so they can be a victim.
So you think it was a stunt?
It was absolutely a stunt, and he wanted he wanted to be a martyr, and that we didn't want to facilitate that, of course. But there is a proper way to do things. There's decorum.
You knew something was up, the fact that he had his own staffer follow him in recording with video and then goes out to the hallway and records the handcuffs.
I'm telling you, I know I'm right about this. There must be some kind of data that exists that tells them that if you swear, voters will pay attention to you and they'll know that you really mean it because they all started swearing all at the same time. And then after that got old, now they all want to get arrested. Where that congresswoman from New Jersey did it, Gavin Newsom was begging to be arrested. Alex Padilla charged the podium when Kristi Noem was having her press conference. And then you have some city official in New York City, the comptroller, I think they call him there, who just got arrested too. They're all trying to get arrested.
We need to be respectful. There's different branches of government. That is not the way to have a proper conversation.
In terms of this week, we've talked before, and a lot of people thought that the emphasis of the Trump administration would be getting rid of criminals, targeting criminals who are here illegal but have also committed other crimes. Is that what's happening? Are other people being caught up in this?
Let me tell you what's happening. Our focus, our priority is to target criminal illegal immigrants who are here. What is hampering our ability to do that, and I think Matt Seedorf was out with some of our agents yesterday and documented that, we're out there, we're looking for it. It's hard to find people, and we get no cooperation from the state of California. Because of SB 54 and sanctuary state policies, we're unable to work with the jails, we're unable to work with local sheriff and police officers to screen people for their immigration status when they commit crimes and to focus on those people and have them removed. We're able to do that in other states. What that causes is that our agents have to go out into the community and do enforcement operations. And the administration has said we can't ignore the law. So when they do that and they encounter people that are here unlawfully, they are subject to deportation and administrative proceedings. So I would say the state of California needs to reverse sanctuary state. They need to take that.
Yeah, that's not happening.
No, but if they want them to just focus on the criminal aliens, that's what they would do. I believe they are perfectly fine with what's going on because what's going on, they think, politically speaking, gives them better standing. But if they actually wanted to facilitate the feds getting the criminal aliens and deporting them, they could do that anytime they wanted to. They choose not to. This is a choice that Newsom is making.
They need to take that away so we can work together to target people who have criminal backgrounds or engage in criminal activity. That would be our preference.
But that's probably not happening anytime soon, right? You'd acknowledge that.
That's up to them.
Yeah. But you know the legislature.
Well,
you just came.
The thing is, even when you try to have a common sense argument about these sanctuary policies, you get so driven down into ideology. I love to point out the example of what Matt Dorsey, San Francisco supervisor, tried to do a couple years ago when it came to maybe bending the sanctuary policies in San Francisco a little bit to make an exemption for all of the Honduran fentanyl dealers that they keep arresting that then say they're victims of human trafficking. Because of the sanctuary policies, they can't turn those people over to ICE, they can't deport them, and they just keep dealing fentanyl over and over and over again. Dorsey puts forth that policy, it gets shot down by the Board of Supervisors, and he gets called a racist.
Yeah, well, because from their point of view, if you're deporting fentanyl dealers, you're separating families. And if that is the position that you take, then you are fundamentally an open borders person. You do not believe in borders. And I got to be honest with you. I personally don't care which way they do it. It would be easier for them to just collect them from the prisons and the jails. But if this is the way the state of California wants to do it, then fine. Because if you've got someone who's a criminal alien and you go pick them up at home and everyone in that house is here illegally too, then fine. I'm of the belief that you are very similar to the company you keep. And if you're shacking up, you're the girlfriend of someone who's, been convicted of murder and the feds want to deport them, then I'm fine getting rid of you too. And anyone else living in that house.
But you know the legislature. You just came from there. They're probably not changing the sanctuary policy.
Then they're responsible for what you're seeing.
You think so? So in terms of the images, though, of people going into farms or people going at a church or a car wash, some of this, it's frightening to people. And a lot of the people are saying, I'm not here. I'm not a criminal who's done a bunch of stuff.
Right.
What do you say to those people?
Well, it's hard to comment on any particular situation because we don't know who the target was at that particular location. But for sure, there are what we call collateral apprehensions in that process where people who might not have a criminal history are being swept up because we have to go out and cast, you might say, a broader net when we go out and do these operations. But again, I'm speaking for the Department of Justice. I'm not speaking for DHS. I will tell you at DOJ in my office, we are laser focused on criminal illegal immigrants.
Let's talk about
now. One of the things, by the way, if they're catching the criminals at work or at home or at church or at school or wherever, and you catch other people who are here illegally, and according to Elex, that leads to fear in the community. What that will also lead to is self-deportations, where if you think that someone might catch you at your job, if you think someone might catch you at your home because you're living with someone who is a convicted criminal, then you may say, you know what? It's not worth looking over my shoulder the whole time I'm here. I might as well go back to Vietnam, or I might as well go back to fill in the blank.
Let's talk about some of the different prosecutions that you're doing, because we had a whole lot of violence and recklessness in the streets of Southern California this week. What's the status of going after some of those people?
We have already filed dozens of charges. We are charging people with assault on federal officers. We are charging people with assaults against local officers as well. In time of civil disobedience, we actually have a federal statute we can charge. We are charging people with arson and with possession of explosive devices. We charged...
But, it was mostly peaceful, Johnny.
Oh, very peaceful. And you know what you take to a peaceful protest? Explosives.
2 individuals who were using Molotov cocktails. But we did arrest a guy that was handing out face shields to all what looked like the rioters. So we're looking at a lot of angles.
Yeah, so that was live on our air, and I spotted that happening and pointed it out in real time. And you guys found the guy who was handing out face shields to people. But there's and the FBI is part of that.
Yes.
But I'm people watching that might think, well, is that a crime to hand out face shields? What's wrong with that?
Well, if you watch the video, you saw it live. He wasn't handing it out to peaceful protesters. He was handing it out to people who were dressed in all black.
Did they commit any crimes? I mean, how is that profiling them?
You have to look at what was going on at the time. These are people. You had lots of people engaged in violence. Destruction of property, assaults on officers, impeding activities down in downtown. That was in downtown Los Angeles.
Right.
He wasn't handing them out at the beach. He was there at downtown Los Angeles, and he's handing out to people who are dressed and behaving similarly to the people who've been committing riots. These are people hiding their faces, wearing black from top to bottom. They have backpacks filled with projectiles.
Meanwhile, the state legislature's biggest goal is to make sure the police don't wear masks anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, the California state legislature wants to get as many police officers killed as humanly possible. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You could download all the episodes. You could also do what George Gascon does to himself every single night.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Or get one of our apps, the KABC app, the KSFO app. Take these episodes wherever you go. Listen to them over the weekend. That way, even if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, you can pretend that it's a
Monday,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and
Friday.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Right now, we're going through the sound of U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli sitting down with Fox 11's Elex Michaelson.
Why would a peaceful protester need a face shield?
good point.
The answer is they wouldn't need one. You'd only need one if you were out there to destroy public property and attack officers.
Well, they would say that they're afraid that the cops are going to attack them. That's what they say.
Cops don't attack people. Cops enforce the law. And if you're located somewhere where it's declared an unlawful assembly, you shouldn't be there. You're committing a crime. And in fact, LAPD has started arresting people for that. So why would a peaceful protester need a face shield?
One of the questions that I said at the time when you see that is that clearly somebody is funding this,
Absolutely.
right? Who is funding this?
Wait, can I get an assist from Shangy there?
Shang?
That I said at the time when you see that is that clearly somebody is funding this.
Absolutely.
Right? Who is funding this?
Thanks, Shangy.
She's so
We'll get
helpful
to
at
the bottom.
times.
We'll get to the bottom of that. We can't.
You don't have the answer to that
I don't
yet?
have the answer right now.
Or you're not willing to tell the answer
I
yet?
can't say either way. That is an active investigation. All I can assure you is we will get to the bottom of it.
I got to imagine he has a lot of open investigations as to who's funding some of these riots, all the government funding that goes to this rapid response network that had the peaceful protesters throwing fireworks at the ICE officers the first day of this whole thing, going back to that first Friday raid. There is definitely a money trail there.
Well, we had Jennifer Van Laar from Red State on who did some investigative reporting on this very topic. And what she found is that it's those organizations that get money, immigrants' rights organizations that get money from the government, and then they use that money to advance the interests of immigrants. Well, I guess they thought that this would advance the interests of immigrants. So that would be one. Another one was the liberal splinter groups from the unions. I think the guy who was passing out the face masks was affiliated with some union that presumably was paying for those masks.
Oh, he was a Teamster, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it wasn't the actual Teamsters, though. He belonged to an offshoot that was a left-wing, I guess, component of the Teamsters Union.
Were folks being protected now by National Guard as they go out into the field?
Yes. Well, National Guard is doing a few things. They're, of course, protecting our facilities. That's
Including
important.
the building we're in right now.
The building we're in now. They're protecting, obviously, downtown, our federal facilities.
And Gavin's still having a stupid fight about this.
Oh, he'll keep it up, too.
They are also teaming up with us in our operations. So when we go execute a search warrant, for example, the National Guard will deploy and set up an exterior perimeter to protect the agents so they can do their job. So they are now enmeshed into our operations, but their role is one of protection. They're not out there doing law enforcement activities yet.
You, I'm sure, heard when now Secretary Noem was governor of South Dakota. She was on with Sean Hannity about a year ago, saying that the concept of nationalizing the Guard from her state was a bad thing.
He actually was going to take control of our South Dakota National Guard and actually activate them so that they would not protect America.
What do you say to that? The people think that that's hypocrisy. That's what Governor Newsom said to me, that that's hypocrisy.
I wasn't aware of those statements. What I can tell you is I was here on the ground both Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday, our agents were overwhelmed. In downtown Los Angeles.
It wasn't just Bill Essayli saying that. Who said they were overwhelmed? LAPD Police Chief Jim McDonnell, and I'm sure Karen Bass has been yelling at him about that ever since.
Well, when you look at the video of the freeway being shut down and the cops having to hide underneath the freeway overpass with police cars on fire all over the place, what more do you need to see?
In downtown Los Angeles, they were surrounded by a very hostile crowd. They were barricaded inside a building, and we needed help from LAPD. Okay, and then our buildings at night were viciously attacked. They were almost able to breach them and go inside. They
mostly peaceful, though.
Oh, very peaceful.
They defaced our property. Saturday, you saw what happened in Paramount. We had hundreds of Border Patrol officers who had to fight this crowd for hours. They fought them for so long, we had to resupply them with munitions with 3 helicopters. Had to come in and resupply them. That was out of control. Both the sheriff and the LAPD said they are down officers. They cannot afford the resources to send all their officers used to protect us because then no one's patrolling the streets.
Sounds like a situation where a common sense governor would at that point say, yes, we need the National Guard.
No, but he's invested in the position that it wasn't happening at all. And then when that became indefensible, his position was, well, it's only in one particular neighborhood in downtown LA. But that's the way it always works. It always works that way. When you look at the bombings going on right now in Iran, the entire country isn't being bombed. It's one particular area that's being bombed. That's what happens. And that's what happened in downtown LA. It was overwhelming. The cops were overwhelmed. They lost control of those neighborhoods. That is not my opinion. That is a fact, and it's confirmed by the chief of police and others. Gavin Newsom said, stop believing your lying eyes. That's the position that you had to take if you didn't want help for the LAPD.
It's not a sustainable situation. So I'll just tell you, we needed the National Guard, and we're grateful they're here. Things, I think, are starting to calm down a little bit, and we're able to do our job without risk of harm.
It's possible you lose the National Guard on Tuesday. There's going to be a court hearing, we'll see, and it could go to the Supreme Court. It might not go on Tuesday. If you lost the National Guard, how does that impact you?
I don't think we're going to lose the National Guard. I actually think we're pretty good on the law. And even if we lost the National Guard, my understanding is that active military personnel can still be used.
What's next for you? Where do we go from here? In terms of operations, let's talk about the immigration operations. Because what are we looking at? I know you don't want to give out your whole playbook, but in terms of what should people be expecting?
Look, we were doing targeted immigration operations long before Friday. We've been doing them for weeks.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, and we're going to keep doing.
Yeah, this has actually been going on for quite some time all over the place, including in Los Angeles. What has changed is this rapid response network that's funded by the city of Los Angeles that told the rioters where to go immediately.
Well, and don't forget that idiot assemblyman, the Democratic assemblyman, that took the video of what was going on in Paramount and falsely said that there was a raid going on at the Home Depot, when in fact the feds were getting ready at a facility that belonged to them that was next to the Home Depot, and Home Depot had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and we're going to keep doing them. So I think what people can expect is we're going to continue those immigration enforcement operations. We're going to do our best to target and focus on those with criminal backgrounds and history. But now we have a new mission, which is to look into all the riots and the violence that occurred. We're collecting lots of video. We're working with FBI to identify key people that were committing violence.
Alex would really like it if you could go after that guy that was smacking the sidewalk with a hammer and then taking the rubble and throwing them at cars.
Oh, that got him retweeted by Trump.
And we're going to be looking at charges, a lot of charges for people that were involved in those attacks.
It feels like we're at a moment, a sort of inflection moment in history when tensions are very high.
Yeah.
What do you think we all can do to sort of bring the temperature down a bit?
Yeah, I think the political leaders of California need to turn down the temperature because they are out there saying that our agents are somehow engaged in terrorism and committing terrorist activities. And
he's not being hyperbolic there. That's what some of these people are saying.
Sure. And you go back to the riots that happened in the 1990s. Yeah, there were bad actors out there like Maxine Waters that were in the streets inflaming everyone. But you still had people, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle, that were sane. And they were out in the streets calming people down, telling people not to destroy public property. Gloria Molina among them. There aren't any Gloria Molinas left. Maybe Tracy Park and a couple of the others, but those people are largely gone, and they're largely not in the Democratic Party anymore. And instead of having them out there telling their people to protest peacefully or write letters to the editor or craft a strong argument, they were out there saying, oh, no, it's not happening. They're not being violent. They're not destroying public property. They're not attacking police officers. They became apologists.
And they're saying they're getting the public emotionally worked up about what we're doing. We're forcing the law. And if we were violating the law, believe me, they would be the first ones in court to get a court order to stop us. So they have a
That's part of the issue here, is that there is no legal argument against what's going on because the feds have every right to enforce the laws. It's our local politicians like Karen Bass, like Gavin Newsom, like members of the LA City Council that are whining and screaming and complaining about something that's perfectly legal.
Well, it's a shock to their system because Joe Biden didn't do it for 4 years. We literally had no enforcement at all of any kind for 4 straight years. So they got used to it just being something that wasn't a big deal. Well, now Grampy Joe is gone and the normal people are back in charge and they're back to enforcing the law. And these people are saying, wait a minute, we've been able to get away with this for a long time. What are you doing? Well, the law didn't change. It's just we now have someone who's willing to acknowledge that it's still there.
So they have
they're trying to uncertain things.
Well, and they're trying to certain things, and we can have those disagreements in court, but we should not have those disagreements on the streets with violence. You can peacefully protest absolutely. But as soon as you cross in that line,
Okay, we're going to need an assist there.
Shang, it's all up to you.
Go.
with violence, you can peacefully protest, absolutely. But as soon as you cross in that line, that's unacceptable.
Thanks, Shangy.
You know, she's getting more assists than John Stockton.
And the politicians, I think, are stirring up people's emotions, like Mr. Padilla with his stunt. It was not helpful. I mean, come here and to say, basically he was suggesting that he was arrested for asking a question. That's not what happened. So the Democrats are turning up the political temperature on this. I think they need to be more objective and we need to have a better dialogue. Their grievance is with the law. They need to go talk to Congress if they don't like the law.
Karen Bass could have stayed in Congress.
She should have. If she did, she would be a respected member of the community whose re-election was a foregone conclusion. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Al writes in, listening from the Port of Oakland, hey guys, I'm a Teamster. The mask guy was probably from Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which is a dissent group not affiliated with the union. Now give me some mango, shango, tango. I like that, fellas.
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
That's my favorite Shang drop of them all.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Matthew in Concord. Matthew, hello.
Hey there, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah. I would love to get paid. I'm a starving artist, and that mask would really help me with my woodworking and everything else like that. But if I get paid to protest, which I wouldn't protest, could I call in sick? Who would I call, and could I still collect a check?
That's a very good question. However, if you're looking for easy money, Randy, wasn't there a program, and I think it was either Oakland or San Francisco, where they paid you a certain stipend if you agreed to not get shot?
It was $75 a week in San Francisco if you if you didn't shoot someone and you didn't get shot. So you also have to make sure you don't get shot to get that $75 a week. I think they ended that program.
I'm only worth $75. Okay.
Well, assuming you don't shoot anyone.
Troops. Thank you to the police for protecting everybody.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. You have to hold up your end of the bargain, though, if you want the $75. No cheating. All right. Let's go back to U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli with Fox 11's Elex Michaelson.
But we don't get to pick and choose which laws to enforce. That's not my job. I'm not a politician anymore. I'm the chief law enforcement officer.
I feel like he's pretty happy about that.
Oh, yeah. Imagine being in the state assembly as a Republican, where you fly up there and vote no on everything, and the majority destroys the state, and you basically get no say.
I'm the chief law.
I mean, it's great if you just want to make big, bloviating statements and fundraise all the time, like some people in there. But if you actually want to make change, unfortunately, in the super minority, you're not going to make any.
Oh, no. He's making a lot more change in the office he's currently in than he could do in 100 years in the minority in the state legislature.
I'm the chief law enforcement officer. I have to follow the law as it's written. They need to go change it.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm just going to reemphasize that the federal government's here. We're not going away. There may be not a lot of consequences under the state system for engaging in the type of behavior we saw over the last week, but there are serious consequences on the federal system. So we really encourage people, go out, peacefully protest. Absolutely, we're going to actually...
Boy, I'm going to need another one, Essayli.
Shangy?
Go out, peacefully protest. Absolutely, we're going to actually defend your right to do that.
Okay, someone's got to let him know. He says it a lot.
Not as often as her.
No. She is the queen.
Absolutely.
I think I have 7 different drops that are just that. Let's see. This one says Shang absolutely 2X.
Absolutely.
Here's Shang absolutely at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. You know, at the end of the day.
Here's Shang absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Here's Shang absolutely rhyme.
So absolutely, this was top of mind for me.
And this one I call Shang Sexy Absolutely.
Absolutely.
She does a lot of phone sex voice work.
Oh, I also have Shang as a robot doing Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You collected them all.
Do not engage in violence, do not fight our officers, and do not get in our way.
Bill Essayli, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
So there was Bill Essayli's full interview with Elex Michaelson that aired on The Issue Is on Fox 11 in Los Angeles and KTVU Fox 2 in the Bay Area, as well as a few other stations up and down the state. And it looks like while the protests are dying down, they didn't really get what they were asking for. These things are going to continue.
And Bill Essayli will be on this program on Monday, I think at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He's going to be here for a live Q&A with us right here on The John Phillips Show.